That's not going to help anything. Wow. Okay, there we go. Good evening, everyone. We'll get started here in just a minute. All right, it's 7:30. Let's see. There are more people joining. I'll mute everybody for a second. Can someone verbalize anything for me just to make sure that you guys can hear me and you can respond? Excellent. Okay, good deal. So while we're waiting, we're just hanging out for a second. Yes, I have the infamous, 007 cat unicorn picture from the 2015 YOW conference, which I believe a gentleman named James Lewis used for his presentation on microservices, to talk about how to bring sanity in microservices. Lewis, by the way, was one of the authors for one of the many books. I think it was Microservices Up and Running or something along those lines. So yeah, good. All right, see a few more people joining. Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and start running through some logistics since it's a few minutes after. So first things first, this is session 4. So this is session 4 today. Oh, hold on. There was one other thing that I remember. Oh, the session's being recorded. Good, it's still going. All right. So this is session 4, and as you may remember from a previous special email, we have a session 5. So we have added another session next week, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that tonight so that we can get clear, because session 5 is going to be very different from any of our prior sessions. First session was about logistics. Second session was about analyzing questions. And then the third and fourth sessions were really like just bring your challenges with the different exams, bring those to the fore, right? Let's let's talk about any potential problems or challenges that you might be running into. So, um, I'm going to talk about the next session briefly, and I may mention it again because I know that more people are joining, but I'll send out an email as well just to make sure that it's clear. So the next session on the 22nd, a week from tonight, is a session that is a little different in that we're going to actually play a Jeopardy game. So we have a variety of quizzes out on this great service called Play Factile. And this is where the links originally came from for, say, like the flashcards and some of the other components that you've seen. And the flashcard component is pretty straightforward. Hopefully some of you have actually used this, like what are the three major models of cloud deployments, what are these locations called globally when you host them, that kind of thing. But there's another mode, which we absolutely love, which is the Jeopardy mode, right? Which is one of the reasons we created this game. So in the Jeopardy mode, like just to do a play now so you can see it. Let's say I just had one team, myself. I played Pineapple. We're just going to start the game. Jeopardy mode, it looks exactly like what you think it is, in that we're going to have 3 contestants at our next at our next session, and we're going to basically have those 3 contestants answer questions while others can look on, chime in, support as needed. So we'll have 3 contestants, and the winner will get a prize, right? I think Greg already called out what that prize would be. So studying the flashcards and knowing the answers can go a long way, right? And getting you and winning the prize that was presented by as suggested by Greg Wagner. So that's going to be our main focus for next week. So it wouldn't necessarily hurt you to kind of learn and study the flashcards as they're listed here, even though they haven't been a primary focus for the exam. I will tell you that every question that's on here is related to an answer that you'll find on the exams, or at least as a prerequisite concept that you need in order to answer the exams. So it is definitely, is not a waste of your time. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do next week. Does anyone have any questions about that? We're basically going to play Jeopardy next week as a means of kind of reinforcement. Looks like a few people maybe typing up some questions. I will ask for volunteers who might be interested. If you are interested, please email me, and I will take the first 3 takers. So whoever emails me the first is who I'll take. And it's michael.forrester@webagesolutions.com. So I'll go ahead and post that out to everybody. And for participating in this extra session, if I remember correctly, Greg basically gave everybody off 25% off their next AWS instructor-led class. So, I think that's all. Any questions, email Greg Wagner, greg.wagner at webagesolutions.com. He handles all that. So, all right. Okay. Let's see. I just want to check in again. Someone mentioned they were having problems on the chat and hearing me. Can everybody else hear me? I know I've gotten a few confirmations. I just want to make sure. Okay. Yeah. All right. Got a few who can hear me. Hmm. Testing. Testing. Okay. Let's see. I've gotten a few confirmations that everyone can hear me. It seems like one person's still having trouble. Let's see here. Bear with me just a moment. Okay. Cool. Okay. All right. Okay. So continuing onwards. All right. So just to repeat for those who just joined us, is that logistically we'll be having class next week. Um, so we will be doing the 22nd. It's at 7:30, and we're going to be doing the Jeopardy quiz that you see on the screen. Okay. So a reminder also that you want to email me if you want to join. So email michael.forrester, assuming I can spell my own name correctly, at web8solutions.com if you want to be one of the 3 participants. All right, remember, winner gets a $25 Amazon gift card. Okay. All right, so today's session 4, and we've spent basically 5 weeks up to this time because we had a 2-week gap in our first period to actually invest and study the Cloud Practitioner exam in detail. So, and the idea there was we were looking for a 95 on one test before we got a 95% on the next test, and so on and so forth, because you've taken the class and you've gotten the labs, and I did recommend, different like white papers and other stuff to read, which was in the prior class, which was these links here, right, about overview of web services, architecting for AWS. I'm actually going to review those here in just a second. But the main goal was to make sure that we were, in a sense, learning the material through challenge and retrieval. And I actually just read a study that came out in 2016 that showed that lecture, increased short-term retention greatly when people were quizzed pretty much right afterwards. But that if it was like lecture, quiz, or even lecture, quiz, what ended up happening is that people were retaining long-term, and from a testability standpoint, it was amazing how much they were retaining. So we are kind of like following that model in order to kind of create retention, but it's also not very comfortable because obviously there's this sense of like, well, I don't know the question, I have to fail, now I know the answer, then I have to go back, and there's kind of like, am I memorizing the questions? This is just like repeatedly failing, and then eventually you start getting some success, and then you start getting some more success, and then you've got the knowledge, so that when someone comes up to you and says, I'm having a failure with cross-region replication, you might need to check on versioning on the buckets because that's part of the exam questions, right? Or if you're trying to copy an EBS volume, which is a virtual hard drive, from one availability zone to the next, you realize that you can't do that directly. You actually have to snapshot it and then copy it up. Why? Because those are like the little nickel and dime questions. That's what the trivia is supposed to teach you. So just know that at first, this is a very frustrating way to learn and pass the tests, but ultimately it ends up benefiting you from a long-term retention standpoint, and will set the foundation for how you, if you decide to pursue any other further certifications, it'll set an amazing foundation for how you approach those. So I do actually actively coach people from Amazon themselves on how to pass their own exams. So I've cited several times how I've gotten emails. I haven't gotten any this week, but I had phone calls and emails last week where 2 of the students passed. One was solutions architecture, one was cloud practitioner. So even beyond our next session, just remember that you want to keep kind of like coming in, mastering the exams, get 1, get 2, then 3, then 4, and just lather, rinse, and repeat. Keep doing it. Again, it may feel like you're memorizing the answers, but frankly, that's okay, right? You've done the classwork, so now we're just like driving it in deeper. Okay. Remember also that when you're going through these questions, right, the first thing you want to do, and let me just pick one so that we can kind of make this real, right? The first thing that you want to do is you want to identify what the requirements are. So for example, in this particular case, an engineer is having trouble migrating and configuring a licensed application that she uses on her instances. What alternative does she have to quickly get her applications up and running in AWS? So they're looking for the quickest method to get a licensed application up in AWS, right? So that's like the requirement. The second thing that we want to look for that was on the sheet was identify the services or keywords that may describe the services if they're not present. So here we are back at our particular question, and it says it's doing an application, but we don't know where that application is hosted. Oh, wait, it says that. It says EC2 instances, right? So now you know that the service involved is there an EC2 service that will quickly allow you to get a licensed product on EC2 distributed into EC2, right? Is there a product that does that? Well, without even looking at the answers, if you are familiar, there was the AWS Marketplace. The Marketplace allows you to go grab licensed third-party software, licensed by the vendor, and launch it into EC2. So even without looking at the answers, you can probably go in there and figure out, just based on that analysis of the question, what are the requirements? What are the AWS services being used? And guess what? There is an AMI for the AWS Marketplace that has a similar setup to our application stack, right? So that was step 2, was just to identify the services involved. And then, for example, if we were to come in here and eliminate like known wrong answers, looking at the practice question, well, the application discovery service, by the way, number 4, that's not going to help, right? Application discovery is used when you have microservices and you need to find other services in the stack. They kind of register with each other. So think of it like as like a much quicker, more flexible kind of DNS, right? Setting up a VPN connection from her local, from local network to her VPC, that's not going to help her with licensing and how she runs on EC2. Now, creating a Docker image and launch Docker in the EC2 instances, sure, you could manually do that, and that might even help with migration and configuration. But just to say this is that Docker adds a whole other level of complexity. So I don't know that it's the quickest way for her to do that, especially we don't necessarily assume that she's familiar with containerization. So then just by process of elimination, we could also arrive at the marketplace answer again. So that's step number 3. So first is to analyze what the requirements are. What's being asked? Is it cost effective? Is it cheapest? Is it quickest? Is it most effective? Is it the most resilient? Like there's usually some kind of ility involved, right? Is it, reliability, availability, scalability, right? I don't know if there's an ility for cost. I'm sure there is, right? So the second is to look at the services, identify the services involved. The third is to eliminate known wrong answers. The fourth is that if there are 2 or more questions with the same structure, then the right answer is probably in that set, and you just need to figure out what the differences are. And then, of course, when you're practicing, you want to write down the right answers to kind of like challenge, capture what it is that you know or don't know. Because if you get it wrong, you're gonna have to retrain yourself to get it right, and so you got to correct that, right? You want to write that down. So anyway, that was the analysis piece that we covered early on. And then of course there was the practice exam itself. So one of my questions for each of you, if you don't mind posting, if you don't mind, like the last test score that you took. So just post that in either Q&A or chat for me. Okay. Okay. Missing a few. Hopefully a few more are posting. Yeah, good. Good. Okay, good. Same responses. So if you took an exam recently, awesome. If you didn't, then you want to get back on it. I mean, this is one of the most surefire in certain ways to learn the material so you can pass the exam. So excellent. Okay, good. So we're gonna meet next time in Do Jeopardy, but this is really the last class where we're actually gonna like review questions and talk about those components. Obviously, you can email me or talk to me at any time. So feel free to email me at any point, before, during, or after the class, and just let me know. The one thing I wanted to also cover before we kind of dove back into the test itself, because I would love to grab somebody's test and kind of walk through the process, right? Is I just want to make sure that we're clear about the links here. So there is the certification main page, which obviously will give you information about the test itself. The other thing is that if you click on any of these tests and decide to retake them, you can easily see what the requirements are. So the actual AWS exam is a 65 question, multiple choice, multiple right answer test that has to be completed within about 90 minutes, it needs a 70 to pass, right? So it's not a 72, it's not a 75, you just need a 70. So you just need to know 70% of the material. Most people obviously want to do better, and then you won't get your score when you sit for the exam. You'll actually get your score about 2 weeks after you get the exam. And just so you know, you will also be on lockdown during that time period where you can't retake the exam in the rare eventuality that you don't pass, or even if you do pass, you still have to wait 2 weeks because they'll give you your scores at the end of 2 weeks. So what else I was going to tell you? Oh, so it is online proctored. So when you take it, make sure that your space is completely clear. No one can come into the room. Make sure there's no second monitors or anything else. If you have like 2 monitors, you actually have to disconnect the other monitor. My recommendation is take it on a laptop in an isolated space. It just makes it cleaner. And you will have to take pictures of the front and back of your workspace. So taking it on a dining room table or even like a temporary table that you've set up so people can see the space is excellent. You will obviously need a webcam. They are relatively sensitive about you getting up and moving in any way, shape, or form. So once you start, stay there and make sure that you don't shift because they will flag you. And they have, things going on where they're like tracking ambient noise and sounds and stuff like that. So you also have to, by the way, have to take off all watches and any special glasses or anything else that you might have. Obviously, you can keep your prescription glasses on. So, all right. Let's see. The other thing I want to point out is that that is not, that's probably not what I was looking for. White paper. That link isn't even valid. Wow, these are all YouTube links. We'll have to fix that. Okay. So let's see. Let me just bring this up right quick. AWS white papers and guides. So if you go to the AWS white papers and guides and you type in overview of services, right? This should take you to an overview of Amazon Web Services. Now, by the way, here's the cool thing. You can get this on your Kindle if you so desire. You can get any of the AWS documentation actually on your Kindle, which is super cool. But let's say that you're just interested in looking at the PDF version. This, by the way, is updated pretty regularly. And so if you're looking for something like you're kind of like tired of questions, right? Just know that you can come in here and kind of generally skim what services AWS has available. And here's the 6 advantages of cloud computing, which is all over the, right? Here's the cloud computing infrastructure models, which is also all over the course. The deployment models, right? Global infrastructure. So a lot of the stuff that's covered in your slide deck is also here in detail. Now, unless you're just wanting to get a refresher, I would probably skip most of this. But you can come in and look at compliance. You can look at the cloud platform. But then what happens is it starts running through the services. So, obviously John has cheat sheets at the end of most of his questions that will, like say I begin a test and then I, just decide to take one and then I'm going to stop it, right? Just so we can get to the end of it. If we go in and review the questions, remember that when you review the questions, John Bonzo, the creator of these exams, is going to give you the full thing plus all of this extra information to read. Now, this is overwhelming. So I only recommend that you get into this if it's something that you're consistently kind of failing at, right? The cheat sheets that he has basically cover you from basics all the way to professional. So like if we were to open this up so we could see it, because he actually takes you out of his test, right? I mean, this is a lot of information about EBS volumes. Do you need all this? Not for Cloud Practitioner. Definitely some for like solutions architecture, for example, associates, and definitely some for professional. So what do you study? You just like read the basic features and stuff, and that's it. And then you move on, right? You don't get too wrapped up in memorizing every detail in these cheat sheets. So just know that this services white paper that we were just looking at contains a lot of much more simple information at a high level, which is perfect for the cloud practitioner. So you can always deep dive into John's material when you get the questions, but know also that this is like a high level skim of like what is EMR, what is cloud search, right? What is the Elasticsearch service, Kinesis data firehose, etc. Right? You kind of get everything explained to you. So just know that this is here. This is the overview of AWS services. The other white paper that I submitted was called Architecting for the Cloud. So again, you can just go to the white papers and guides and just type in Architecting for the Cloud, assuming you can spell architecting, which obviously I cannot. Or maybe I did. Maybe I got it right, and it just doesn't like it. It just doesn't like it as a verb. Da, 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 da. That's not working for some reason. How about the well-architected framework? That's probably what we're looking for. So there's a bunch of lenses here, right? But there's also just the well-architected framework, which the well-architected framework plays a much stronger role inside solutions architecture. But just know that the well-architected framework will give you, at least the first little bit, will give you the 5 pillars of foundation for things to think about when you like design inside of AWS. So just know that's there. The other white paper that's important is what is it called? Costs on AWS. Yeah, AWS pricing. How AWS pricing works. This one, by the way, does show up on the Cloud Practitioner exam quite a bit. And it hasn't been updated in a minute, even though prices have changed, because the methodology of pricing hasn't changed a whole lot, right? So this one, by the way, we'll go through and give you like pricing details for each thing. You really don't need, you only need to focus on the services that we've kind of like touched on in depth. So like reserving DynamoDB capacity or, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily dive into that. But these first few pages, especially the first 4 or 5, probably worth skimming, right? So just wanted to make sure that you knew those white papers were there. They can add an extra dimension if you're feeling like, oh, I'm kind of tired of questions. I want to get to something a little bit deeper, a little bit more. Okay. So good. Support plans is probably the other, sincere link. Why is all of that YouTube? I'm not even sure that happened. So let's take a look at this really quick. AWS support plans compared, right? So this, by the way, shows you the full comparison. By the way, basic isn't listed here because basic gets you nothing. It's not even a support plan. You get basically access to forums when you get a login. That's it. It's really developer, business, and enterprise. Just so you're aware, from a pricing perspective, it used to be that developer, the lowest of the ones, was just a flat fee. It used to be $49 a month. Now it's $29 a month, or it's 3% of your spend. So if you spend $100, it's going to cost you $29 because 3% of 100 is only 3, and that's not going to count, right? But if you spend $400 a month with AWS and you have developer support, then what's going to happen is that wait, that's not even right. If you spend $4,000, right? That's probably going to be more like where you're like approaching above the $29 mark, right? So basically at $1,000 and above, you're basically going to be paying for developer support because that's 3% of spend, which is greater than $29. Now, the math for the rest of these support models starts getting really interesting at this point in time because it's like 10% of monthly AWS usage, right? Or 7% of monthly AWS usage. So, and then when you're up at enterprise, which follows pretty much the same tiering, just with different breakpoints, what ends up happening is that at that point, you're probably going to sign a contract with AWS. It just depends on what you want to do. Okay, so just know that the pricing sheet is out there as well. And then AWS cost management. By the way, AWS is coming out with a financial cost management class for builders. So just know that if you're interested in knowing how to do it, like you want to be taught by AWS deeply on how to manage your costs, they have a 3-day class. I believe it's coming out in mid-July from what it was announced today on the call I was on. So excellent. Let's see here. All right, so cost management solutions, by the way, will cover things like tag allocation, cost explorer, consolidated billing, if you need credits. There is things like controls and forecasting, stuff like that. So this page basically will tell you which of the about 5 or 6 tools you want to look at. And don't be thrown off about this. There's only a couple of tools. Cost explorer is a tool, cost and usage report is a tool, consolidated billing is a tool, what else? Budgets is a tool. Budget alerts is just a subset. But just know that Cost Explorer, consolidated billing, cost and usage report and budgets are going to be the main things that you use. If you go to your profile, if you're in your AWS account, it's under the billing section. Everything there is a tool to help you figure out how to do costing. Amazon's gotten a lot better with that. They still rely a lot on third parties to really optimize, but they're coming out with more and more tools to kind of make that crisp on terms of how you can manage your own costing. It's funny, they list things like S3 intelligent tiering as a costing tool, which it's really not. It can help with right sizing and saving, so which is, I guess, what their point is. Okay. Any questions about anything that we covered at all? Okay. All right, so let's talk about exams again. So before I go forward, maybe with this particular exam, is there anybody who wanted like to review, like for us to look at their exam? Anyone who wanted to showcase their exam, have us walk through it, highlight anything? And someone asked a question about is there a recording of all this good stuff? Yes, there is a recording for all this good stuff, and actually I'll post this into the chat. I've sent out several emails that have a YouTube channel list in it, and that YouTube channel contains, let's see, I'll let you see behind the scenes of this amazing YouTube channel. It's not amazing, it's just there, this YouTube channel. Let's see. There's actually a Cloud Practitioner Essentials private unlisted channel that has all of our recordings in it. So I'm actually going to post this into chat so you can all see it. So let's see. Send this to all just in case as well. Right, so there is actually a channel. So this is being recorded right now, and so all of this gets put in there. And I just updated the Google Doc, so it continues to grow as I add stuff to it. So I will also send out another link to that through S3 through a PDF, which I have been good about that for the last 2 weeks. So I'm pretty patting myself on the back, pretty proud of myself, right? So been good about sending out the emails to make sure that you have them. Cool. All right. Any volunteers? Anybody who has a test they want to show, talk about, review? And again, I don't require anybody to do it. We can go over and do another practice exam. But I just wanted to check and see if anybody had any burning questions about their exam that they really wanted to hone in on. Okay. All right, cool. So then let me just grab this particular exam and we're going to refresh it. Oh, God, I got a 1%. I'm a horrible person. Not even qualified to teach this class. All right, so let's retake this test because I want to walk back through some of the analysis. I want to put some of the tools into practice that we practiced from the second session. Okay, so here we are. We're beginning the test again, and we're on question 1. Now, one thing I want to mention that's a great methodology that you're going to do differently for inside the exam, outside the exam, is that when you're inside the exam and you make a guess, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. When you're in the practice exams, so we're right here in the practice exams and we make a guess, like you're not super sure about your answer, so you make a guess about it, you're going to star that question. And you're going to star it because you had a certain path of logic that you followed. I know you've got your own form of insanity, but I'm not questioning that. Whatever flavor of insanity you have going on in your inner world is totally fine. We accept all forms of insanity that are not harmful, right? But whatever process you followed in your brain, if you make a guess, you need validation about whether your logic was correct or your retrieval was correct or not. And so if you don't star it and go back in those questions and look at them, you might have gotten them right, but you don't have certainty about your process for getting to that answer. So in the practice exams, you're going to star questions that you guess at. In the real exam, and let me say this very clearly, in the real exam, you are not going to star any question that you answer. You are not going to go back and review your questions that you've answered and then change your answer, because statistically your first guess is typically going to be your right guess, right? And so if you've answered it in the real exam, you're not going to start. If you answered it and you guessed in the practice exam, you're going to start, because you need to make sure, right? But one thing that you will do is, if you don't answer a question and you want to skip it in the exam, you're gonna start, right? Because when you're taking the test, you can't leave any question unanswered, because it's going to be valuable to you. So you're gonna have to go back and kind of like review it and make sure that you answer those questions. But the minute you put an answer, you don't star that, because you probably guessed correctly. Probably. No guarantees there. All right. So in this particular case, what we're looking for is, this is a question that, first of all, is asking, like, what are the requirements? Well, the requirements are, what are the advantages? What are the services involved? It's like all of them, right? All of them. So you just kind of like need to know, right, what Amazon thinks about, the 6 things it thinks are the greatest things about cloud computing, which is not wrong. I'm just, right? There's just degrees, right? So from a business perspective, you can increase speed and agility. You could trade variable expense for capital expense, right? You could get massive discounts for your computers, network devices from Amazon online shopping. Wow, I wish that was true. Achieve lower economies of scale, and then trade capital expense for variable expense. Interesting. By the way, they used to say trade capital expense for like operating expense, and now they've shifted it. So this is just a straight memorization question. So I'm going to go ahead and answer this one, but from now on, I'm going to ask you to type your answer into chat before I go forward. But I'm going to say this one and this one, because CapEx is what you spend when you buy hardware. Operating expense or variable expense is what you spend when you buy, it's like a software subscription. And we don't want lower economies of scale. We want greater economies of scale. And this one, I don't even, that's just silly, right? So even from process of elimination, I could already eliminate some of these answers. All right, question number 2, and I'd like everybody to put in their answer for this one, right? Preferably in chat and not in questions. But either way is fine. I'm not going to throw stones. What service allows you to create alarms that notify you when EC2 CPU utilization thresholds are breached? All right. What is your best answer? What allows you to create alarms? Okay, so follow my process. What are the requirements? So first of all, the requirement is I need something that creates alarms when EC2 CPU thresholds are breached. Okay, what services are involved? Well, that's really the question, right? We know EC2 is involved, but it sounds like that I need to have a service that will create alarms. So my second process is actually the answer to the question. Now, the third is process of elimination. So the first answer, AWS config, right? Oddly enough, doesn't change configuration, but it tracks configuration. So config's job is just to track configurations inside of AWS. That's all it does. CloudWatch is a monitoring tool that will do alarming, thresholding, it'll trigger actions. So that sounds like that one will fit. SNS is a notification service that will send email, mobile push, text, SMS. It'll do all kinds of stuff in terms of notifying people of things, but it's reactive, so it's not really smart. It only responds when someone posts a message in there. And then auto scaling allows you to scale machines up and down, but it has no alarming or anything to it. So definitely 2 is the answer, because it's the only one that has alarms attached to it. The rest of these are all dumb services that respond to alarms, but they themselves cannot create alarms. So got to be specific, right? So CloudWatch is the answer. And since none of these were identical, we didn't really get to step 4, right? All right, great answers, by the way. Thank you for doing that. Question number 3, which of the following is the responsibility of the customer in the AWS cloud? So here we are with another question that doesn't really have a requirement and a service. So it's not really about an EC2 service, This one is pretty much just straight memorization. And my golden rule around security, like security responsibility, because that's what they're really asking, right? Around AWS is that if you can control it, log into it, or configure it, you're responsible for it. If you can't, then you're not responsible for it. So by process of elimination, managing users in the AWS account, yeah, that's me. AWS better not be sticking users in my account, right? Ensuring that AWS services comply with the standards required of them. Well, I can't do anything with the AWS services. Don't get me wrong, if I can control them, right? Then that's probably my response. But I don't control the services. I don't control all aspects of the services. I can only use the services. I can't really configure the services, right? So that's probably not the answer. Upgrading chipsets to the latest commercially available product. Well, I don't even know where these systems are. I just vaguely know they're in Virginia or they're like in Oregon. I don't know where these systems are. So I can't even touch the physical machines, because that's why we buy cloud, is so that we don't have to touch physical machines. So I'm definitely not going to upgrade any chipsets. Managing data stored in the AWS resources. Well, since I'm putting data in there, I probably want to manage that data, right? And so that's probably my responsibility, because there's no data there unless I put it there. And if I put it there, I'm responsible for it, right? So I probably want to go ahead and do manage data. And I hope, just like chipsets, that I never actually even ever get close to Amazon's disk drives, because I just don't want that level of responsibility. So 2 and 4. Well, good answers there. All right. Question number 4. Go ahead and type your answer at any point in time. Which AWS support plan includes a concierge support team, which is going to assist you with billing and account inquiries and work with you to implement billing and account best practices? Do you think that would be first tier, second tier, or if that's like mega tier, right? To get your own concierge support team. What do you think the answer would be? Well, we know it's not basic, so we know it's not number 3. I'm pretty sure that if I pay $30 a month and I get a concierge support team, well, I'm just going to quit using every other service I have and just use that service, because that sounds amazing. Now, it could be the business support plan and it could be the enterprise support plan, because both of them are big spenders. So type in your answers and we'll take a little guess here, and then we'll reveal the answer before we close. Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. I got a bunch. Okay. Cool. All right. So a lot of people guess enterprise. So I'm going to go ahead and put enterprise down, right? But this is another one of those things that you kind of like have to kind of quasi know, but I'm not going to give the answer. We're going to go with what the group said. All right. Remember, by the way, since that was a guess, we probably want to star that one. And even this one, we'll star that one just in case. All right. Good participation. Remember that typically your first guess is going to be the right guess. So unless you missed some detail, right? All right, so which of the following security group rules are valid? So first of all, our requirement is that we're looking for valid security group rules. Our service is security groups, which is actually a subset of, well, you could argue it's either EC2/VPCs, but we're not going to argue that. It's under the EC2 rule set, okay? So now you have to know a few things about security groups, like right off the bat, right? One, is it valid for you to have an inbound HTTP rule with a security group ID as the source for the traffic? Can you govern inbound traffic into the EC2 instance with security groups? Yes, you can, right? You can actually govern with another security group as the source, right? So you can actually do that. So that's probably valid, right? Can you do an outbound, basically TLS 443 HTTPS rule with a host name has the destination? Now, to my knowledge, I don't think that you can put a host name in. You can put a security group, you can put like an IP range, but I don't think you can stick a host name in there. I could be wrong. Can you put an inbound TCP rule with an instance ID as the source? Again, much like the host name, I don't know if you can stick an instance ID in there. I don't know. But an inbound TCP rule, that doesn't seem to be a problem. An outbound MySQL rule with IP address as the source. An outbound MySQL rule with IP address as the source. That sounds like something that you might be able to do, but I might be a little doubtful around that. And then what about an inbound RDP rule with an address range as the source, saying I want from this range to this range? I think you can put in an IP address with a subnet mask. I don't think that you can stick in a range. So if I were to guess, right, I would do outbound MySQL rule with IP address as a source, and then we're going to start this. And lo and behold, a lot of you guessed along the same lines. So that's good. We'll see what happens. We could all be wrong, right? Probably not. All right. Next question. Which type of elastic load balancer allows you to forward the incoming request to a target group with a Lambda function as the target? Now, think about this. Having Lambda as a target means that it probably needs to be able to do some kind of pathing. So, because pathing, by the way, allows you to target like different target groups. And so, because just say this is Lambda is really like almost like nano services. It's like functions as a service. It can barely do microservices, but it can function as a bunch of applications can function as an endpoint for an API. So it's totally valid for that purpose. So which do you think is the most sophisticated type of load balancer that could potentially handle some kind of like redirect or pathing connecting it to a Lambda function? I got to tell you, first of all, it's probably not none of the above, but right? We could be wrong. Maybe none of these can use Lambda as a target group, but Lambda is pretty popular with Amazon. So, classic load balancer definitely isn't going to cut it. So just by process of elimination, right? And then, but it could be a network load balancer. It could be an application load balancer. But the network load balancer is pretty dumb, actually. It's not a smart device. All it does is an IP address and a port. That's all it really does, right? So again, and I'm kind of, by the way, mirroring what I'm seeing people like respond to, is that it sounds like the application load balancer is going to be the one that we want to look at. We'll make sure we get that. Okay. Here we are, question number 7. So among the following payment options, which of the following can you choose when you purchase a standard or convertible reserved instance? Select 2. Okay. So you may remember that when you go to get a reservation, you can do 3 different kind of payment types with those reservations. Again, this is going to be in the costing paper. So this is almost a little bit of straight memorization because there's really 3 areas that you have to memorize. You have to memorize the security piece, the cloud advantage computing piece, and you have to memorize, 4, support, and then of course the reservation types. But that's it. So what can you choose? I don't think that there's a bill me later payment. I've never seen one. I probably wish there would have been one in some cases for some of the startups I was working for, but I don't think there's a bill me later payment. I've never seen that. Now, I have seen a partial upfront payment because there's no upfront payment, there's a partial upfront payment, and then there's a full, like all upfront payment, right? So I see some of you've already posted these answers, so good job, right? The reserve payment, well, it's all reserve payments. That doesn't make any sense. A deferred payment, no. Amazon does not do a bill me later deferred payment. No, Amazon, by the way, will work with you. I've had companies that I walked into that were 7 months late on their AWS bill, and AWS, they had not made a single payment, and AWS was totally working with them. Special circumstances, of course, right? So, but there is no deferred payment. So I'm going to guess that's probably 2 and 5. And yes, I am using the answers that you guys posted. So we'll make sure. Good job. All right. Question number 8, now we're back to networking. Which of the following should you set up in order to connect your VPC network to your local network via an IPsec tunnel? Now, what's the requirement? We need to connect VPCs back to our corporate network. What's the service? Well, it's VPC, so it's got to be a service associated with VPCs, and particularly there's a requirement that it uses an IPsec tunnel. Well, IPsec belongs to a very particular kind of tunnel. And when you say tunnel, by the way, that's a trigger word for this service. That's VPN. VPN uses tunnels to connect one endpoint to another endpoint. So automatically you know that there has to be a service here that touches VPN, because that allows you to connect your VPC network all the way over to a private network. So a NAT gateway isn't going to do it, because that has nothing to do with IPsec tunnels. An on-premise NAT gateway isn't going to do it, because that has nothing to do with IPsec tunnels. And the VPC peering connection between your on-premise network and VPCs, well, peering, by the way, is between peers. So that's VPC to VPC. That's what peering is for, right? When you hang out with your peers, it's not you're hanging out with grandpa and then your 6-year-old brother, right? You're hanging out with peers who are the same age. So VPC peering is for VPCs to connect to each other. So the last one is a VPN gateway in your VPC connected to a customer gateway in your on-premise network. Well, VPN is the winner, because VPN is the technology that uses an IPsec tunnel. So that would be number 4. We can start this one if we want to, but I think we're pretty good. All right, question number 9, just checking the time. Which AWS service allows you to check if your running resources conform with AWS best practices? Okay, so a requirement here is that we need a service that will tell us when our other services are not conforming to AWS best practice. Well, out of the gate, it's like the answer is, because that would be number 2, like what service are they talking about, right? That's the answer, is what service are they talking about? So what service is going to tell you when you don't have security, efficiency, cost optimization, performance, like which service is going to do that? Well, IAM is the identity management service. It governs users, groups, and roles, so that's not going to help. Config, as we saw earlier, all it does is tell you when configurations change. It doesn't actually do configuration. So that's not necessarily going to help us with best practices unless we wanted to check them manually, but it's not going to tell us, per se, right? We got to go in there and eyeball the whole thing, but it's not going to instantly check it and say, hey, you know what? You're not conforming with best practices. CloudWatch, like config, could also be used to go in and check on these things, but it's not. Config and CloudWatch don't have any rules for what the best practices of AWS are. There's only one service that has already built-in rules about what AWS's best practices are, and as you guys have all posted for it's Trusted Advisor, right? Trusted Advisor already has the rules for AWS's best practices stuck inside of it. Good. All right, question number 10. Which service will allow you to quickly deploy your application into the cloud without having to build or launch the individual resources yourself? Meaning it will build your VPCs, it'll build your security groups, it'll build network security, storage, compute, and it will launch it out for you. I mentioned this, and I'm sure Jeff did too when you took depending on who you took the class with, right? But again, we need to have a service that will deploy individual resources for you, and that's the answer number 2, is like, what's the question? We're looking for the service, so that's our second step in our process. And the third, by process of elimination, is, well, EKS is a Kubernetes service, and it doesn't do all that for you. ECS is a container service. It also doesn't do that for you. And EBS is a virtual hard drive. That's the Elastic Block Store. You attach virtual, so that's not going to do it for you either. Now, if they put CloudFormation out here, that might be something that kind of like you'd have to like pay attention to, but you have to write CloudFormation. The best answer here, and this is a great option for anybody who needs to get production level capabilities, but doesn't necessarily understand how AWS functions and doesn't need something highly custom, it's Beanstalk. Beanstalk is definitely the answer. All right. Good. I see some of your answers in there. That's good. Good, good, good. All right. We're going to do one more, and then we're going to pivot over to answering the questions. All right. Last one. Everyone type your answers at any point in time, right? All right. So which AWS service is going to let you provision either Windows or Linux desktops in just a few minutes and can scale easily to provide thousands of desktops to workers? So these are not servers, these are desktops, right? So they don't even have EC2 listed here, which is nice, right? So you need to know a little bit about the services if you're going to answer this particular question. But organizations, by the way, allows you to take multiple accounts and put them under one kind of billing and service control umbrella. So organizations isn't the answer. Cloud9, by the way, is a fun and awesome IDE that will allow you to program right through your browser. And it's fun. It used to be actually a third-party product called Cloud9, but now it's part of Amazon and they only offer it in web. So it's pretty cool, especially if you end up switching computers a lot like me. Systems Manager, by the way, can manage systems. I haven't really used it to deploy anything in mass, but it's usually for servers. It doesn't do it for desktops. That's the key requirement, right? So then the answer is going to be workspaces. Workspaces is basically virtual desktop infrastructure that Amazon provides to you. Everything Windows 7, Windows 10 doesn't matter. Well, I guess I don't know if they're still doing Windows 7. I haven't seen that lately. But if you need a Windows desktop, it will provide that to you. And you can install like pretty well-known applications in there like that. So it's pretty good. All right, so we'll put workspaces. We'll go ahead and stop the test here. Yes. How did we do? Oh, we failed horribly. I think we got a question wrong. All right, so let's go ahead and review the questions just to see. We got about 6 minutes left. So this one, straight memorization, got that, did that pretty well on that one, right? We knew that increasing speed and agility and trading CapEx for OpEx, also known as variable expense because they've changed their language, that was ideal. But the rest of this isn't even valid. By the way, here's John's amazing explanation, right? And then we did alarming for EC2 CPU utilization breaches, which I explained clearly that CloudWatch is probably going to be the answer just because the rest of these don't have alarms. They're just not services who do that. John, in turn, will explain that to you in epic detail if you'd like to go through that. We then covered security responsibility of the AWS cloud, like which part belongs to the customer. We went through that talking about basically you have to manage access and you have to manage data, right? Because you control access, you control data. So you see all these data breaches in the news where it's like, hey, Capital One left their S3 buckets open so that the world could read all the credit card information. That's on them. I'm sure AWS sent many notifications saying, are you sure that you want to put this information on the internet? Yeah. By the way, they have a product called Macy now that will scan your S3 for PII and warn you if PII is there and if it's open to the world. And it uses these intelligent pattern matching algorithms. It's really nice, actually. And it does data classification as well. All right. Some of you were doubtful about this one. You were like, wait, in which one would you get a concierge support team? If you want a TAM, a dedicated concierge support team, well, it's not dedicated, it's just shared, right? You have to pay the highest dollar, and that's going to be enterprise, because that means your spend, by the way, is like $150,000 a month, if I remember correctly, at a minimum, right? So that means you're spending $1 million a year with AWS. So they're going to invest in you at that level. So it's enterprise. Enterprise is where you get all the tchotchkes, right? So just keep that in mind. Here it is again, in case you'd like to see everything in detail. But notice the concierge team is over here, and it's not over in business or developer, right? So really the main thing that business and enterprise share, right, is like the full set of checks, recommendations, API support, especially, and I think you get a billing support as well, like API billing, interoperability, but you don't get all the like infrastructure event reviews and TAMs and concierge. That's all enterprise level. All right. Which of the following are valid, right? So this one was interesting, right? because it's really tricky. By the way, security groups used to only be able to manipulate inbound traffic. They added outbound, I want to say like 18 months ago. So, funny thing is that it says, how about an outbound MySQL rule with IP address as a source, right? Well, here's the problem, is that you cannot actually, like, the source can't be modified with an IP address as a source, because, right, since it's outbound, you have to set the allowed destination, not the source destination, right? Because it's an outbound rule, right? So an outbound rule, you can't control where it's coming from, you can only control where it's going to, right? So that's why that's wrong. But with inbound, you can actually set a source, but with outbound, you can't set a source, you can set a destination. So, all right. Question number 6, the reasoning about the application load balancer was correct because it's the only one basically that will, can basically forward to Lambda. The other ones are too simple for that. I think I called them dumb. I hope they're not offended. I hope the load balancer gods are not offended. So, I think I covered this one pretty clearly. There's full upfront, partial upfront, and no upfront, right? If you want to get a reservation. So just know you can pay nothing and yet agree to pay for a year or 3 years. You can pay half and pay a year or 3 years, or you can pay full and get a year or 3 year discount on your EC2 reservations. Full explanation right there. And then we talked about VPN gateway, and you just have to know that IPsec tunnels are 100% associated with VPNs. That was covered in a little bit on the VPN service, right? The VPC VPN service. And then we talked about Trusted Advisor, and even by process of elimination, the others don't make sense. Trusted Advisor is the only one with rule sets that actually check for AWS best practices. So we kind of eliminated that one as well. And there were some great answers from you all on that. And this question was about Beanstalk, right? Which is about, this is the one that orchestrates everything. You just need to answer a few questions. I think of Beanstalk as a wizard for CloudFormation because oddly enough, it actually uses CloudFormation. So it's a great tool. And then last question before I close it out, because I know we're kind of there, is that Workspaces is the only service that provides desktops, not servers, desktops. So don't let those words kind of throw you off. Okay. Does anyone have any questions in these like final few minutes that we have together? Okay. Well, we're going to meet next week. Next week is going to be a quick summarization and review. Please, please, please practice your tests every day if you can. The more you invest, the quicker this goes, but it does require a heavy investment. So do your best to schedule it and see if you can sneak it in. Again, once you get 95% on one exam, go to the next. And then when you reach the end, by the way, I just want you to randomly take exams if you're already there. And as long as you're consistently scoring a 95, you're actually ready to schedule. So I want you to schedule your certified cloud practitioner and then let me know. Know that if you need some one-on-one help, please let me know because you can schedule with me and I will sit and talk with you. If you want some guidance, you have some sort of questions, you have some concerns, please just reach out to me and I will sit with you. We'll schedule a time and we'll figure it out. Okay? So it's 8:31, so we're about a minute past time. It's the end of a long day. I know you guys have been amazing. It's Monday. We are meeting next week at 7:30 p.m. for our final session. Please email me, michael.forrester@webbasedsolutions.com if you want to participate. Otherwise, I'm going to have to pick a few people, Let's see if I can get someone to volunteer, right? So, prize is that you win a $25 gift card, but just for showing up, you're going to get 25% off of your next AWS lead class. So thanks again for hanging out with me tonight. I'm going to stop talking, but the class is officially closed and we will catch you next Monday, but I'm going to linger for a few minutes just to answer any questions that pop up in chat. So you guys have an awesome night and we'll see you in a week, and I'll send out an email with a bunch of information here soon. Thanks everyone.